All right, thank you so much, Aaron. So, as we're getting ready to wrap up today's event, we do have one more guest that will be joining us, and it's a big one. This is Dr. Rick Watson, the president and CEO of the Peregrine Fund, and my boss. So, I'll try to not say anything stupid. Dr. Watson, thank you so much for joining us today and being a part of this event.
Thanks, Matt. Great to see you, and it's a pleasure to be here to speak with you all.
Looking at the event today, it definitely struck me, and I hope it has gotten across to all of our viewers as well. Just the level of success that this Condor Project has had. We are looking at a species that, within my lifetime, just 30 some odd years ago, was completely gone from the wild, and now we're looking at a wild population of a couple of hundred. So I'd like to ask you, to what do you think we owe the success of the Condor Project, all the success that we've seen?
Well, there's quite a number of different reasons it's been so successful, but I think the biggest one is making sure that everything that we do is based on good science. So, we have a whole research program supporting and backing up this entire recovery plan. So sound science is essential for making good decisions, conservation decisions, and adapting to new information as it comes in. I think the other things are, gosh, it's tough work. It takes a great deal of tenacity. It takes teamwork to make it all work. Adapting to new information as it comes in, dealing with problems as they occur, backing up your teammates. It's critically important. And then I think the third sort of major thing is the high level of collaboration and cooperation that we have with our partners in this program. We're not doing this by ourselves. We work with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and we also work with other organizations that are breeding California condors, like San Diego Zoo, LA Zoo, and Oregon Zoo more recently, as well as, of course, the facility that we have right here in Boise, Idaho, which is actually the largest captive breeding flock of California condors anywhere. These four facilities all put their birds together and then swap them around, and they get released in both in Southern California and in Arizona, Utah, where we are working to manage the flock out in the wild. So science, teamwork, tenacity, collaboration, those are all really key ingredients in a successful species restoration program like this.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the condor is certainly not the only species that's in need of recovery. Unfortunately, the world today is in peril for a lot of species, and those four pillars certainly can be applied elsewhere. And so, how have the lessons learned through the success of the Condor Project been applied to saving other raptor species, both by the Peregrine Fund and by other organizations as well worldwide?
It's a great question. The Peregrine Fund started off by breeding and releasing peregrine falcons, hence our name. 50 years ago, the species was right on the brink of extinction in North America, and through captive breeding and release, we were able to bring it back from the brink. And in 3 decades, 30 years, we were able to take it off the endangered species list. So that falcon, and also the Aplomado falcon, another North American species, are the species that we really learned how to breed in captivity and release back into the wild so that they would survive and live to breed and set up territories and breed themselves. What we've learned with California condors is that they're rather different. We can breed them fairly successfully in captivity, but the whole process of releasing them back into the wild is much more complicated than, say, releasing falcons is. They're scavengers, they're intelligent, they're very curious, and to be honest, they get into trouble when you release them. They do things that are not good for their own survival, to include interacting with human beings, which is never a good thing for wildlife to do. So what we learned there is to, instead of releasing these birds like we do with falcons at fledgling age when they first learn to fly, we actually hold them back for about a year before we release them. And that gives them a certain amount of learning to go through while they're safely in captivity, and then they survive much better in the wild. Well, then we've been able to apply that lesson to other raptor species, other vultures, for example, in South Asia, where there are restoration programs going for 3 different vulture species that almost were extinct in the wild back in the early 2000s. That's an interesting story where science, our research, discovered that a veterinary drug called diclofenac was causing kidney failure in vultures that consumed carcasses that had been recently treated with the drug. And it was virtually wiping out 3 different species. So there, the science told us that we needed to deal with that drug, but then the 3 species were at such low numbers that they had to go through a similar process of breeding in captivity and then released back into the wild. And the folks doing that work learned a great deal from us and the work that we've been doing on California condors and how to release them safely back into the wild. Other species that we've worked with are like the harpy eagle from Central America, a species that we did a captive breeding program with through the 2000s. And again, we learned that using the lessons from the California Condor program, that it was better to hold those young birds back in captivity for about a year before releasing them into the wild. They had a much higher survival rate if you did that. So lots of lessons learned from the California Condor Recovery Program.
And lessons that we would not have learned had that aspect of science not been there, had those observations not been made. None of these things would have happened. It certainly speaks to the key of incorporating sound science into these recovery efforts.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything has to be based on sound observations, statistical analyses, really understanding what you're seeing based on good science.
So looking at the work that the California Condor Project does, it certainly is just one of many projects of the Peregrine Fund. How does that particular cog fit into the work of the Peregrine Fund as a whole?
Great question, Matt. The Peregrine Fund sort of strategically has created 4 major pillars on which we base our conservation actions. One is to save critically endangered species like the California condor, Aplomado falcon, Ridgway's hawk in Dominican Republic, and so on, through captive breeding and release. So taking a really species right on the brink and saving those species is something we do as a specialty. That's one of the pillars. Saving critical landscapes. We're working in Darien and Panama to save that rainforest, and in Madagascar as well, to save forest and wetlands that are critical for the survival of not only raptor species, but many other animal and plant species as well. And then thirdly, we tackle landscape level threats. So California condor is a classic is dealing with a classic landscape level threat in the form of lead poisoning from the remains of spent ammunition. The condors will forage on the carcasses of animals or just gut piles that hunters may leave in the field. If they've used lead ammunition, there's enough lead in those remains, oftentimes, to definitely sicken and maybe even kill California condors and other species as well, other scavenging species like the bald eagle and golden eagle and even mammals. So tackling landscape level threats is the third pillar, and then engaging people to inspire them to value raptors. And once you value a group of animals like this, you want to take action to save them. So engaging people, inspiring people to take action is the 4th major pillar. So the California condor checks off 3 of those 4 major pillars fairly readily. Critically endangered species, landscape level problem that we're dealing with, and engaging with people to inspire them to take action.
So looking forward, what are your hopes for what this project is going to look like in the future? 5 years out, 10 years out, 50 years out? What do we hope this becomes?
Well, hopefully 50 years out, this project is done and finished, and we've moved on to other things. In fact, conservation is interesting business in the sense that we work hard to put ourselves out of business. We really want species to recover fully and to go off on their own and not require any more management in the wild to maintain the species. So that's our ultimate goal with the California condor. It's to reach the recovery goals that was established, 30 years ago by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, to have two self-sustaining populations that do not require any addition of captive bred birds or any management in the wild. So that's our ultimate goal. To reach that goal, the primary problem we need to resolve is the lead poisoning from the remains of spent ammunition in the gut piles and carcasses of animals that have been left in the wild after being harvested. And we're doing that through what we call the North American Non-Lead Partnership. And this is a nationwide effort to engage with hunters and other sportsmen and women who use ammunition in the wild, and explain how lead ammunition leaves enough lead in the remains of lead in these animals that they actually can sicken and even kill avian scavengers, other vultures, California condors, bald eagles, golden eagles, and so on and so forth. So many hunters now are switching to non-lead ammunition as being the right conservation choice to make. And that's really our goal, is to eliminate lead poisoning as a risk to California condors and their survival. So that's our near-term goal. Once we've achieved that, I think California condors will recover very quickly and do very well in the wild without further management.
It is amazing how wild species they want to live. And as long as we give them that chance, they'll do their thing. We just need to make sure they have what they need to succeed.
That's exactly right. Species in the wild are really very resilient until humans do something that causes high levels of mortality. But the great thing there is that if it's humans causing the problem, it's also humans who can solve the problem. So it's really in our hands as human beings to make this world a better place for wildlife to live.
And it's a thing that we can and are doing.
Exactly.
Looking at the success of the condor, we can do this.
We can. We're doing it right now.
Yep. We've got the support of some wonderful people out there, many of whom are watching us right now. There's something of a fatalist attitude, I think, in a lot of content out there that, these species are just done for, there's nothing we can do. And that couldn't be farther from the truth.
Yeah, exactly right. And I must say, related back to one of your earlier questions, we can't do this work without the support of the general public. So many people, so many individuals, foundations, and government as well pitch in to fund this effort, and it's critically important. We couldn't do the work that we do without the kind of funding that our viewers help provide. So thank you all from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you for all the support that you provide.
Well, Dr. Watson, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to speak with us. It's been a pleasure and great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Matt. It's fun to be here and talk about the Peregrine Fund and all the great work that my colleagues out in the field do every day. Thanks, Matt.
Absolutely. Take care, and we'll do it again next year.
Sounds good. Thanks.
All right, Aaron, back to you.